Part 273. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2726. Bai Shan walked over to Man Bao, put his hands behind his back, and watched as she treated the wounded soldier. Man Bao took time to look up at him. Bai Shan smiled at her, and said softly, "You are busy, I will wait for you." Man Bao lowered his head and continued to work. Behind him, Daji hesitated, frowning slightly at the handkerchief of his young master covering his hands. Bai Shan shook his head at him and stood aside to watch her. Man Bao unceremoniously instructed him, "Help me get the scissors." Bai Shan put the handkerchief in a ball behind his back and stuffed it into his narrow sleeves. Then he went to look through her medicine box and handed her the scissors. Man Bao took it, and cut the clothes of the wounded soldier with a few clicks. Only then did he start to deal with the dirt on the wound, and then stop the bleeding and apply medicine. Man Bao bandaged the wounded soldier and turned to look at Bai Shan. "What's wrong with your right hand? Bai Shan, can you find this?" Man Bao reached out to him. Bai Shan paused, and could only take out his right hand and put it on hers. Man Bao knew at a glance that his mouth was shattered, and he couldn't help asking, "The enemy has such great strength. Don't you use a sword? How can you fight against others?" Bai Shan sat cross-legged on the ground and said, "It was cracked when I blocked Zhao Qiagong." He described the situation at that time carefully, highlighting his kindness and sensitive response. "Anyway, it is very powerful, and it is still unconscious. I think the Kung Fu learned from Master Jidi is still very useful. He must have been unable to react before, and even if he reacted, he might not be able to stop Zhao Qiagong. His strength is really great. It's a pity that his sword is broken. Alas, that was bought by his grandmother for a lot of money." While dealing with his wound, Man Bao said, "Is that soldier okay?" "It's all right, I was just frightened. I should be in a prison camp now." Man Bao nodded, put medicine on him and bandaged him, and asked, "Is Zhao Qiagong angry?" Bai Shan tilted his head for a while and said, "It's a little bit, but Zhao Qiagong is not so stingy. Although I did nothing wrong in this matter, after all, I refuted him in public, and I will apologize to him later." Man Bao said, "I'm with you." She said, "I'll cook him some tonic soup. It's pitiful. During this period of battle, Zhao Qiagong has lost a lot of weight." Bai Shangzhen became a little uneasy and worried for Zhao Qiagong. Man Bao cut off the gauze with a click, let go of his hand and said, "Okay, don't use force for the time being, don't touch the water, I'll change the dressing for you tomorrow." Bai Shan nodded and was about to speak when he heard a sound and turned his head to look west. "I saw the holy car arrive. The wounded soldiers placed outside the city, those who could move, all knelt on the ground." Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other and stood up. Zhao Qiagong and General Ashina led people out of the city, and when the holy car arrived, they knelt down on one knee to greet the emperor. Man Bao and Bai Shan also knelt down and salute. The emperor got off the horse, took 2 quick steps, supported Ashina with one hand, and Zhao Qiagong with the other, pulled the two up and looked at the wounded soldiers kneeling all over the ground, sighing, "I am fortunate to have you, all the soldiers have worked hard, I am ashamed of this kneeling." General Ashina, to be loyal to His Majesty is the wish of the ministers and others. He said moved, "As long as it is for the good of your Majesty and for the good of the great Jin, the minister will not quit." The emperor held his hand with a moved face. Seeing that he looked tired, he couldn't help but look at Zhou Man behind him. "Master Zhou, come and show General Ashina a look." Man Bao, "General is exhausted, just rest more." She paused and said, "Or will I give the general a needle later?" General Ashina said immediately, "Lord Lao Zhou is here." The emperor asked the wounded soldiers to get up, not in a hurry to enter the city, but looked at the wounded soldiers outside the city gate, sighed and said, "This is not good, how can my heroes who pioneered the frontier sleep in on the dirt?" He said, "Didn't you occupy a few streets inside? Clear out the houses inside and let the wounded soldiers stay there." Zhao Qiuagong replied yes and turned around to arrange for someone to vacate the house. Bai Shan responded quickly, "Your Majesty can't." General Ashina also said quickly, "Your Majesty, this is not right." The two made a sound at the same time. They both paused, glanced at each other quietly, and Bai Shan lowered his eyes to let him speak. General Ashina gritted his teeth, secretly said a little fox, and then said to the emperor, "Your Majesty, now we only occupy the west city gate. There are at least 90,000 enemy troops in the city of Ungshi. They should not be afraid, but if the entire city of Ungshi is against us?" Last night, part of the reason why we were able to defend the west city gate was that the people kept their doors closed and did not interfere in the disputes between the two armies. If we disturbed the people at this time, it would probably arouse the resentment of the people of Ungshi city. Zhao Qiuagong knew that what he said was right, but he couldn't help but snorted coldly. Could it be that my Jin army is still afraid of a group of foolish people who are helpless? General Ashina's tongue is unfavorable, and he can only say, "It is better to have less than one more thing." Zhao Qiuagong said, "But I can't chill the hearts of my great Jin soldiers." General Ashina was choked. Bai Shan smiled and said, "Your Majesty, the city is not yet settled, and the wounded soldiers have difficulty moving. At this time, it is not safe to live in the city outside the city." He said, "Your Majesty should set up a medical tent outside the city, and set up tents to gather wounded soldiers." He added, "The holy car should not enter the city, but should camp outside the city, and the main tent should also be set up outside the city, so that the advance can be attacked and retreated and defended." General Ashina immediately said, "Yes, Your Majesty, there are still enemy troops in the city at this time. How do you know that they will not assassinate them? Please, Your Majesty, set up a tent outside the city." "Emperor, how did it get involved with him?" The other ministers and generals accompanying the army immediately followed and persuaded the emperor to stay outside the city. Even Zhao Qiuagong did not dare to joke about the emperor's safety. The city is indeed unsafe now. Who knows where there are assassins in ambush? What if you get shot with an arrow while walking? So the matter of the wounded soldiers entering the city was over, and the soldiers began to set up camps outside the city. At the emperor's insistence, General Ashina, Zhao Qiuagong and others still agreed with him to go into the city for a walk. The main reason is to appease the people in the city and let them continue to stay at home honestly, and the Jin army will not hurt them. Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other and went in as well. One of them is a close minister of the emperor and the other is an imperial physician, and it is best to stay on the left side of the emperor at this time. When the emperor entered the city, he shouted "Long live inside," so half of the people in the city knew that the emperor of Dejin was here. As for the emperor of Shangguo, the people of Ungshi city have never had the chance to see him in their entire life, and this may be the only time in their life, so someone quietly opened the window, leaned on the wall and quietly looked in the direction of the west city gate. It's a pity that there are many houses in the middle, and they can't see anything. But I can hear the sound. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2727. The emperor first walked around the tower, then condolences to the soldiers who participated in the war, and finally went to see the prisoners. The prisoners were all driven into an alley. At this time, regardless of whether they were injured or not, they were all sitting, leaning on the ground, and seeing such a large group of people at the entrance of the alley, they could not help but get up and kneel in fear. Seeing that many of them were still bleeding out, the emperor said he was in a state of embarrassment, his face panicked, and he couldn't help sighing, "Move all the prisoners out of the city, and select the wounded soldiers, Zhou Qing, your medical account. Let them deal with it." Man Bao glanced at them and lowered his eyes. So the soldiers escorted the captives out of the city and cut a piece of open space a certain distance from the tent to accommodate them. Man Bao continued to follow the emperor to patrol Ungshi city. In fact, there was only one main street and 4 alleys. The shops on both sides were closed, and there was no sound at all. Occasionally, there would be children in the residential area crying lowly, but if you listen carefully, the sound is gone. The emperor stood at the street and watched, no longer mentioning the matter of entering the city to settle the wounded soldiers, but said to the accompanying courtiers, issued an edict to appease the hearts of the people, and let them close their doors and not go out for the past few days. The crowd bowed their heads. The emperor ordered Bai Shan and Lord Fang, I ordered you to read and write, and it is important to appease the hearts of the people. Bai Shan and Lord Fang bowed in response. The emperor wandered around and left the city, looking down and thinking about what to do with the city of Ungshi, or the entire Goguryeo. After Man Bao left the city, she greeted everyone and turned to deal with her wounded. At this time, no one was busy and she was not busy. Everyone didn't mind, and after watching her leave, they talked together in 2s and 3s. An official looked at the bandage wrapped around Bai Shan's hand and asked with a smile, why is Master Bai injured? Bai Shan smiled slightly and said, it's not a big deal if the strength is poor and the skin is stretched. Zhao Qiuagong glanced at it and said, Master Bai's hand is used to draft the edict, so it must be protected. Bai Shan bowed and replied yes. The emperor's attitude directly calmed the hearts of the captives, and the edict was issued quickly. Although no one would come out to see it, Bai Shan called the soldiers to memorize the edict and then carried gongs along the alley to publicize it. They also called Honglu temple officials who were familiar with Goguryeo to accompany them, and the 2 languages took turns. The originally quiet city of Ungshi became more and more quiet, and the people all closed their doors and decided to wait for them to decide the winner before going out. No matter who is in power, it is the same for them. The royal court of Goguryeo was not good enough to deserve their hard work, and Dajin was not evil enough to need them to work hard. And what the emperor wanted was just such an attitude, he didn't expect that they would in turn help Dajin fight the Goguryeo army. The rest is theirs. Zhao Qiuagong took over General Ashina and began to organize the soldiers to advance in an orderly manner. Man Bao divided the students into 2 groups and let one group go to rest first, while she took the rest to see the descending soldiers in the prison camp. The situation here is different from the previous ones, so the emperor will not let them go. The release of prisoners at this time is equivalent to sending soldiers to the other side, so all the prisoners are guarded in the prison camp. They don't run either. The main thing is that if they run now, they will be caught on the battlefield by the opposite side. They may also be rushed to the front line to block arrows. It is better to stay in the Jin army and be prisoners. Although they eat less, they will not be hungry. Death is not. There is still a military doctor to see, and medicine to eat, happy. Man Bao's eyes turned red, and she didn't return to the hospital until evening. Seeing that she was so tired, the cakes that came with the army immediately went down to prepare hot water. When she came back with a pot of hot water, Man Bao was already sitting. He fell asleep with his head tilted in the chair. The cake can only put down the wooden tub, twist the cloth to wipe her face and hands. While hesitating and not knowing what to do, Bai Shan came back. After taking a look at Man Bao, he said to Zibing, go find her a set of clean clothes. Cake bent his knees and turned to turn over the box. Bai Shan took off her coat, then carried her to the bed and asked Zibing to change her clothes. Zibing couldn't help looking at Bai Shan's wrist. Bai Shan didn't care, got up and said, change her clothes, then go to the kitchen to get a piece of meat, chop it up and cook porridge for her. The cake said, meat, it's not easy to get it. Bai Shandao, it is said that Master Zhou of the medical bill will use it. They dare not give it. She already has a case, but she has not used it. The biscuits should be placed. Bai Shan just sat down and someone called from outside, Bai Sharan, Your Majesty is calling. Bai Shan could only get up and leave. Chen was about to be captured, and he was busy too. Zhao Qiagong held his breath, and he was very vicious when he brought people forward, but he captured half of the city in half an hour, directly cutting off the opponent's road to the North City Gate. Of course, there are also reasons why Yuanyi retreated in a hurry and was ineffective in defense. The army led by Zhao Qiagong was an elite forbidden army, which belonged to Yin Li. Yin Li has always ruled the army strictly and did not allow soldiers to harass the people. In addition, the emperor was also here. No one dared to attack the people in the city. Then Yin Li took his troops and horses from the city to besiege the defenders at the North City Gate, cutting off their back road. Qi Bai Li outside the city received the news, which made the soldiers cheer up, and the imperial army in the city also responded with a resounding response from the sky. General Gao was attacked from front and back, his morale was greatly affected, and finally he couldn't stand the pressure, so he could only open the city gate and surrender. Qi Bai Li led his troops into the city and joined forces with Yin Li to take over the North City Gate. When Man Bao woke up, most of the city of Anxi had already fallen into the hands of the Jin army. Zibing came in with a wooden tub and twisted a towel to wipe her face. Man Bao asked, "How is the front line?" Zibing said, "We are still fighting. I heard that we are fighting in the streets and alleys." Master Wen is the master and divided the medical account into two. He brought people into the city, so that the wounded soldiers can be treated without having to send them out of the city. Man Bao nodded, clearly satisfied with the decision. The cakes brought out the meat porridge that was simmered this morning. "Sir, this is what the slaves have prepared for you." Man Bao took it and asked while eating, "Has his wound been treated?" Zibing shook his head, "Sir didn't come back last night." After thinking about it, Man Bao knew that they were busy, so he stopped asking, and went to the doctor's account after eating too early. She raised her head and glanced at the tower, saw the emperor, General Ashina and others standing on it, and went upstairs as well. When the guards guarding the tower saw it was her, they stopped him and went to report to the emperor, and only let her go up after getting approval. The emperor turned his head and smiled at her. "Zhou Qing has worked hard." Man Bao bowed and said, "This is the duty of the minister, and there should be no word of hard work." She also looked up at the inner city and asked curiously, "Have they not surrendered yet?" The emperor did not answer, and General Ashina said, "They will not surrender. If Anxi city is lost, the Jin army will be able to push forward. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, they will not give up." See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2728. The second prince of high school did not intend to surrender, he was thinking of seeking peace. While writing a letter to Wang Ting, he gave a death order: "We must defend the city of Anxi, and we must not let the Jin army go any further. As long as they hold on to it long enough, the peace talks will be possible, and they will have more confidence. Prince, we only have less than 70,000 people now, and the food and grass are probably less than half a month." The second prince's expression changed. 100,000 soldiers and horses were distributed all over the city. Naturally, their food and forage were also placed everywhere. Because the Jin army was advancing too fast, they had no time to take away all the food and grass when they retreated. The most important thing is that yesterday and today, many soldiers who could not resist surrendered, and naturally the food and grass in the occupied areas were also taken away by the Jin army. Received. The second high school prince calculated and felt that 10 days was not enough, so he said, "Call the big households and wealthy businessmen in the city and ask them to donate food." He said, if the Jin army occupied Anxi city, they would not be better off. You must know that many large households in Liaodong city and Bian city have been relocated to the interior of Dajin. When the generals heard it, They looked at each other and felt that it was feasible, so they bowed and left. Sure enough, I received a batch of food and grass. When the news reached the Jin army for some reason, the emperor frowned slightly and asked Zhao Qiagong, who was covered in blood, "When can we take Ungshi city?" Zhao Qiagong thought for a while and said, "If your majesty wishes, you can do it in one day." "Oh," the emperor asked curiously, "how to attack?" "Just a fire attack." The other generals thought it was a good idea. Bai Shan twitched the corners of his mouth, and the other courtiers quickly said, "Your Majesty, this hurts the peace." Then he sprayed Zhao Qiagong, "What kind of bad idea did you come up with?" Zhao Qiagong said calmly, "Your Majesty, the weather is getting colder, and it will snow soon. Even if we are not short of food and grass, it is inconvenient to stay here for too long. If we want a quick solution, this is the best way. As for the people in the city, you can let them move out from the north gate, so that you can force out the Goguryeo soldiers hidden in it, and you can continue to go east and south in one day." The emperor pondered, obviously thinking, they really can't stay here for a long time, time is their biggest problem. Bai Shan said, "Your Majesty, we are waiting for the attack on the city of Ungshi to put it under the rule of the Central Plains. The people in the city will all be the people of Dajin, and we should not regard Dajin as an enemy. Your Majesty is their parents, not the people of Dajin. Their enemies." He said, "It takes a few days, or even months, now, but it is worth the years, decades, or even several generations in the future. Please be patient with your Majesty." The other courtiers hurriedly said, "Please be patient, your Majesty." The emperor nodded, "Okay, then attack it slowly." Zhao Qiagong said, "There is another way, you can send someone to persuade them to surrender." He said, "Anyway, half of the city of Ungshi asked us to shoot down, and there were many people who surrendered. I felt anxious when I wanted to come here. At this time, I went to persuade us." Bai Shan's heart moved, and he immediately said, "Your Majesty, why don't you send someone to visit the inner city?" General Ashina also remembered, "Yes, Feng Shangshu has been late to Ungshi Cheng, and most of them went to the inner city. If we also send envoys to Ungshi Cheng, we may be able to break their relationship with Ungshi Cheng. 8. It can also dampen morale in the inner city." So everyone discussed the success rate of doing so. The emperor asked, "Who wants to go to the inner city, and who wants to go to the city opposite the city of Ungshi?" After the scene was quiet for a while, Zhang Hui, the servant of the Ministry of Rites, came out and said, "I would like to go to the inner city to persuade the Gao family to surrender." With the strength of the current Dajin, the royal court of the Gao family would definitely not dare to kill the envoy, not to mention the well-recognized diplomatic etiquette, when the two countries are at war, they will not kill the envoy. After thinking about it, Bai Shan came out and said, "I would like to go to the opposite side to persuade the second prince of the Gao family to surrender." The emperor was not worried about Zhang Hui, because he knew that most of the royal court of the Gao family would not dare to embarrass him, and at most they would drive people out. But he was worried about Bai Shan, and frowned slightly. At this time, the atmosphere on both sides is tense, and Mr. Gao may be angry in his heart. If he disregards etiquette and hurts you. Bai Shan said, "Your Majesty, other colleagues will also have this disaster, and the minister is young, there is still a chance to escape." The emperor thought for a while, it's not good for him to push anyone to do this. Since Bai Shan took the initiative to ask Ying, he could only nod his head and said, "Okay, you go." Bai Shan immediately said, "I ask your Majesty two things." "You say." 1. The minister asks the right to be appropriate, and when we get there, the minister is allowed to act cheaply. The emperor nodded and said, "You are an envoy, and you have this right, and Zhang Qing also has the right to suit it. Of course, there is the batch. When he goes to the inner city, the emperor is far away from the sky, and the emperor can't control him at all, but he is a few streets away from the emperor when he goes to the opposite side. Okay. Bai Shan continued, the second item is the gold and silver jewelry that your majesty has collected during this period. After being stunned for a moment, the emperor smiled slightly, waved his hand and said, yes, you can just use it. Bai Shan bowed in response. Shuigui, who had been standing at the end, suddenly came out and said, Your Majesty, the last will be willing to protect Lord Bai. The emperor remembered him, especially when he rushed into the enemy army in a white robe and rushed out of a hollow area. He laughed and said, Okay, I have such a good minister, are you still afraid of Liudong's disobedience? I am sure. So Bai Shan and Zhang Hui retired together, and the two went to divide the emperor's gold and silver jewelry. Zhang Hui directly picked out all the good-looking gems and said to Bai Shan, the city in the country is full of high-ranking officials from the royal family, and they have high vision, so I took these things. Bai Shan didn't hesitate, took all the precious medicinal herbs in several boxes, and said to him, now Xicheng is fighting, and the medicinal herbs for saving lives are rare, whether it is a rich family or a general who needs this, I don't want it. You are very polite to Mr. Zhang. Batch. So the two of you took lingluo, I took silk and satin, and if you wanted jade, I took pearls. In a short while, the tribute received by the emperor during this period will be almost divided, and the remaining antique calligraphy and paintings are not easy to get, and they will be left to the emperor. Shuigui, who was watching from behind. And Gu Zhong who led them here. Gu Zhong couldn't help but said, the two adults can leave after they are divided. Our family has to go back to serve His Majesty. Bai Shan asked people to make a book of the things he chose and move them out, and smiled with Gu Zhong, don't feel bad, Master Gu, these things are just going out for a while, and when Xicheng is taken down, these things will come back. In His Majesty's hands. Zhang Hui did not dare to make such a guarantee. Who knows if the domestic city can be beaten down? After the two left the tent, Bai Shan decided to go back first and say goodbye to Man Bao, and by the way asked her if she had anything good to save her life. Daji didn't understand very well, young master, you always cherish your life, why did you take the initiative to take such an errand this time? Bai Shan said with a smile, care for life does not mean cowardice. The generals are very hostile. They are all unfit to be lobbyists in the past. Among the lobbyists who can be envoys, except for Master Zhang and Master Fang, I am the only one. I also think strive for one or two, and make some achievements. He said, Xue Kenjun knows that he is wearing a white robe to fight for His Majesty's attention. I have a better chance than him, so why should I be a mediocre person? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2729. Bai Shan ran back to find Man Bao and told her that he was going to the other side to be a lobbyist. When Man Bao heard this, he was a little worried, they won't cut you directly, right? Bai Shan, I will try to keep them from cutting me. If I do you have anything good here to protect me? Man Bao, what if I chop your head off? I wouldn't stand and be beaten. Man Bao asked Keek, do you still have the clothes you recommended to me last time? Keek, you ignored me at the time. I thought the host didn't want it. Before Man Bao could speak, he said enthusiastically, but that is the research product of the Encyclopedia Museum, and it has been on the shelf. How many sets does the host want? It said, the host is also on the battlefield, don't you think about making a set for yourself? Man Bao, why don't you let me give the emperor another set? Can the host explain the source of the protective suit? This is different from your fabric, it is still not recommended for such a dangerous thing. So this thing can't be too much, Man Bao said, one piece is enough. It's clearly her own, Bai Shan already knows that there are different existences around her. Under such circumstances, what if she buys another one for herself? Keek has opened the shelves of the encyclopedia and asked Joe Man, which of the three colors to choose. Man Bao just glanced at it and said, black. Keek unceremoniously deducted a large amount of points and technology tax from her, and after getting a generous rake from it, he asked the encyclopedia to mail the clothes. Man Bao then said to Bai Shan, I'll give it to you when I get back to the tent. Bai Shan's eyes brightened, and he lowered his voice and said, it really does. Man Bao nodded. Bai Shan's smile brightened, and Man Bao looked at his smile for a while, so he put down the medicine in his hand, reached out to hold his hand, and asked, does your hand still hurt? Bai Shan glanced at the hand being held, paused, and nodded, it hurts. Man Bao gently took his hand into the hospital account, I'll give you medicine. Daji, standing behind him like an invisible man. He touched his nose, stood at the entrance of the tent and waited, and stopped the other people who wanted to enter the tent. Bai Shan finally came out of the hospital tent with a red face, and the wound on his wrist had been bandaged again. Standing at the fork, Daji asked him, Master, where are we going? Bai Shan stood at the vent and blew the wind, making his flushed face return to normal. He lowered his eyes and thought for a while before saying, let's go see Jiu. On this expedition, Gao Yu and several important envoys were taken along with the army and kept under guard. It's just that they have been treated as captives, and they kept begging to see the emperor, but the emperor never saw them once. During this time, they watched the city of Goguryeo constantly being breached and closed, and the torment in their hearts could be seen. Gao Yu was deeply regretful, and even felt that the reason why the Emperor Jin took him like this was to humiliate him, to humiliate his oversight, and to humiliate his calculations in Chang'an. These are to tell him that his calculations in Chang'an are not enough for the Emperor to mention. Gao Yu was in pain, he was in pain, and he couldn't help torturing the people around him. There were always beatings and scoldings coming from his side tent, and Yin Li sent someone to ask and reprimand him several times for this, and then made a noise in the army, and next time he directly killed him. Although Gao Yu felt that Yin Li didn't dare to kill him, he didn't dare to gamble, and he has restrained a lot since then. When Bai Shan came over, his side tent was quiet. There were guards guarding the door. When he saw Bai Shan, he didn't stop him, he opened the curtain and let him in. As soon as he entered the tent, he smelled a strong medicinal odor, and Bai Shan couldn't help it. He looked towards the place where the smell came from. Lu Mian sat on a small stool and boiled the medicine. He looked up, slightly surprised, and immediately got up and saluted, Master Bai. Seeing that he was about to lose shape, Bai Shan couldn't help frowning slightly, and bowed his hands in return, young Master Lu is sick. Lu Mian shook his head gently and smiled, no, this is the prince's medicine, and the fifth prince is sick. Gao Yu, who was lying across a curtain, heard the voice, and immediately got out of bed and dragged his shoes out. His eyes lit up when he saw Bai Shan, brother Bai, save me. He took a few steps forward, bent his knees and was about to kneel. Bai Shan quickly stretched out his hands to support him, remembering that his right hand had just been bandaged, he retracted his right hand and dragged him with his left. Fortunately, he followed the battle during this period of time, and he has been practicing martial arts. His arm strength is okay, and Gao Yu didn't kneel at him too sincerely, so he supported him as soon as he supported him. Gao Yu also found that Bai Shan's right hand was inconvenient, and quickly asked with concern, why is brother Bai injured? Bai Shan smiled and said, it is inevitable for people to be injured on the battlefield. Gao Yu heard the words and said sadly, brother Bai also went to the battlefield to attack my kingdom. Bai Shan sighed and said, 5 princes, it's been so long, haven't you seen the current situation? He said unceremoniously, Goguryeo has the heart of not being a minister. Since the establishment of the Great Jin dynasty, it has not only refused tribute many times, but also prevented Silla and Baikya from paying tribute. In recent years, it has often violated borders. Do you think the army will return without success? Gao Yu's face was pale, and after a while he said, Brother Bai is here to make fun of me today. No, Bai Shan said, we have an acquaintance in the end, so Bai does not want to see the prince so upset, and he doesn't want to see the prince go on this dead end. He said, Your Majesty has destroyed a lot of subjugated countries. The former includes the Turkic countries and tribes, and the latter has the Joseon royal family. But whether it is the former or the latter, as long as it can be properly arranged, Your Majesty will not begrudge official positions and property. Bai Shan lowered his voice and said with all his temptation, Look at General Ashina, he used to be a Turkic prince. After he surrendered to me, he is now not only a consort, but also a confidant of His Majesty. The fifth prince is also a prince, and even more so. Having studied in Quasijian, the talent is no less than Ashina. How can you know that you can't become the second Ashina? Gao Yu's eyes lit up and he became tangled. Bai Shan lowered his voice and asked, Could the prince of Goguryeo be more honorable than the high-ranking officials of Dajin? Is there any place in this world that is comparable to Chang'an and Taiji Palace? Gao Yu's heart was shocked. Of course it couldn't compare. Not to mention Chang'an in the domestic city, even a county in Yangzhou was more prosperous than it. The flow of people and goods was far less than that of other countries. Gao Yu was excited, he couldn't help grasping Bai Shan's left hand, and asked, What should I do? Bai Shan said, Why didn't the fifth prince surrender to His Majesty? Gao Yu said with a face of shame, I can't see Your Majesty. Bai Shan smiled and said, I can tell the prince on his behalf, but he needs the fifth prince's personal belongings, preferably something that can represent his identity. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2730. Gao Yu gave a piece of jade pendant the size of a child's palm to Bai Shan, and he said, This is something of my royal court. After we were born, our father and king asked the craftsman to make it for us. The jade pendant has my name on the inside, you give it to Your Majesty, and Your Majesty will make it for us. You know my sincerity. Bai Shan held it and nodded solemnly with Gao Yu, Okay, fifth prince, don't worry. Gao Yu also nodded seriously. Lu Mian, who had been standing quietly beside him, opened his eyes to watch them go and go. Bai Shan turned his head to see him, smiled slightly at him, and caught a glimpse of the small bruised arm that he had pulled up because of the medicine. His eyes sank, the smile on his face remained unchanged. He turned his head and said to friends Gao, Five princes, Your Majesty likes people who are kind, and when the fifth prince sees His Majesty, remember to be more generous, and please His Majesty to like it, Your Majesty may be happy. Immediately reward you with official positions and titles. Gao Yu's eyes lit up and asked, Can I be the princess? Bai Shan's expression remained unchanged, and he said with a smile, If Your Majesty is happy, the fifth prince may take the opportunity to give it a try. See if the emperor doesn't cut you. Do you really think anyone can be a princess? Asuna was able to marry the emperor's sister at such a young age, that was because he was already known as a fierce and wise general in the grasslands before he surrendered. Will be forced to join the Dajin by the opponent. But even if he took refuge in Dajin, he brought his own clansmen and troops and brought his own political resources. The emperor married his sister to him because he wanted to appease the Turkic troops and Turks who had taken refuge in him, and because he liked his talent. What is Jiu? If the second prince on the opposite side is willing to surrender, there may be a chance. After all, unlike Gao Yu, the second prince of Gao has military power in his hands, and his management in the Goguryeo kingdom is deeper. Bai Shan pondered in his heart, can he use the temptation of Shangzu to deceive the second high school prince? Bai Shan quickly rejected this idea in his heart. Forget it, the second prince of high school is different from Gao Yu. The other party must not believe his empty promises. If he really asked him to write a document, where would he make a princess for the emperor? and the emperor may not like such a cheap son-in-law. Bai Shan took the jade pendant and said goodbye, and before leaving, he whispered to the guards guarding outside, "Take care of the people, and then we will detain them separately." He said blankly, "They're already prisoners. Where is the distinction between the noble and the lowly? Although the main tent is far from here, His Majesty might pass by at some point. It's not good to hear abusive voices." The two guards looked at each other and bowed in response. Bai Shan just left. After walking for a while, I encountered the badge head-on. As soon as Bai Shan saw him, he was shocked, and immediately put the jade pendant in his hand into his sleeve, greeted Zhang Hui with a smirk on his face, and saluted, "Master Zhang." Going after the ceremony. When Zhang Hui saw him, his heart skipped a beat. Seeing that he was about to leave, he immediately moved his footsteps to block him, and glanced at the direction he was coming from. After confirming, his bad premonition became stronger. He stared at Bai Shan's sleeve and asked, "Where did Master Bai come from?" Bai Shan said, "Let's go, Lord Zhang, I have to prepare for the envoy, so I won't disturb Lord Zhang. After saying that, I will go around the badge." Zhang Hui grabbed him, his face changed, and then he tried his best to smile and said, "Master Bai, we are all going to risk the enemy country, why don't we sit down and communicate?" Bai Shan tried to pull his sleeves back, and said, "I'll talk to the adults later, I have to see my wife now, and you know that I'm going to take a risk, so I have to report anything to my wife." Master Zhou is reasonable and can understand Master Bai. It's not urgent. After saying that, he pulled his sleeves over. Bai Shan pulled his sleeve back again and said, "It's urgent. If I knew earlier that I wouldn't wear wide sleeves to look elegant in front of Gao Yu, I regret it." Zhang Hui grabbed him and glanced at the direction he was coming from. Seeing that he was in such a hurry, he became more and more certain, so the two brothers took his shoulders and pulled towards their tent. "What's the hurry, Master Zhou? Is you daughter-in-law, can she still run? Walk around, we will be brothers in need, I have good wine there, take it out to strengthen your courage." Bai Shan, he doesn't like drinking. But he was pulled to the tent by Zhang Hui. He didn't let go of Bai Shan, and once he entered the tent, he let him go to find wine. Personal follower, the wine has long been drunk, where did he go to find it for the master? But he hesitated for a moment and turned around. Bai Shan pulled hard, but found that he couldn't pull it back, so he could only give up. He resignedly sat on the chair. "Master Zhang, if you have something to say, say it." "Since Master Bai said so, then you are welcome." He stared at Bai Shan's sleeve. "Master Bai came out of the 5th prince of the high school, right?" Bai Shan thought for a while, and felt that this matter could not be concealed, so he nodded. The badge said, "What good thing did you get? Score half of it for me." "Bai Shan, a jade pendant, how can you divide it into half?" He said, "If Master Zhang wants it, I'll just ask him for a copy." Zhang Hui, he's not a fool. With your experience, how could he possibly fall for me? Zhang Hui was so remorseful, he was so late, it was his fault that he remembered it late, if he had remembered that there was such a prince in the army. Bachelor Bai Shan spread his hands and said, "Then there is nothing I can do. There must be a first come first. Zhang Hui simply said, "No, if you don't give it to me, I will go to His Majesty. If the inner city is willing to surrender, and directly order the second high prince to obey, the trouble of Ongshi city can also be solved. Before going to Majesty, it is also based on the overall situation." Heavy. Bai Shan, after all, Gao Yu is a prince, and he must have a lot of things on his body. "Why do you have to fight me with a jade pendant?" He said, "If you have this skill, you can go to Gao Yu to get the same. But this piece in your hand must be the thing that best proves his identity." Zhang Hui said, "Then I will go and ask for one, and you will exchange it with me." Of course Bai Shan disagreed. Gao Yu said that this jade pendant is unique to the prince. He said, shouldn't it be him who can best prove his identity? Bai Shan said, you might as well take Gao Yu directly to the inner city and let him be a lobbyist to persuade the royal court of Koguryo. Zhang Hui looked at him with the expression, you think I'm an idiot, then why don't you take him across the street to persuade the second-year high school prince? Because the second high school prince is just his brother, I don't know how their brother relationship is, and the second high school prince will definitely not be willing to exchange half of Cheng for him, Bai Shan said. However, there is the father of the fifth high prince in the domestic city. Mother, as well as my uncle's family and the forces under him, if he can persuade his forces to agree to surrender. The badge pondered, and let go of the hand holding the sleeve. Bai Shan immediately retracted his sleeve, stroked his injured right hand, and exhaled, Master Zhang, think about it carefully. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2731. Master Zhang pondered, after all, that is the capital of the enemy country, bring Jiu, if he wants to go back, I can't stop it, isn't that letting the tiger return to the mountain? After entering the inner city, let alone Jiu, even his life is in the hands of the Goguryeo royal court, which is equivalent to sending Jiu back, unless his heart is completely biased towards them. There is also the saying that he is in Cao Ying and the heart is in Han, but if not, Zhang Hui looks at Bai Shan, isn't this giving a bargaining chip to Goguryeo in vain? Bai Shan sat on the chair very indifferently, and when he saw him looking over, he raised his head and smiled at him. He said, let the tiger return to the mountain, then he must be the head of the tiger. How can Master Zhang know if he doesn't give it a try? Master Zhang is still hesitating, where is your majesty? Bai Shan lowered his eyes and straightened his clothes, then got up and said with a smile, your majesty's original intention was to use him for peace talks in case the eastern expedition failed, but now that we have all captured half of Goguryeo, his original role is no longer needed. If Master Zhang is interested, I can go with you to meet your majesty. This is an option in wealth insurance. With Jiu, he has a higher probability of success, but also a higher probability of failure, and the benefits and risks increase at the same time. Zhang Hui turned around twice, and finally gritted his teeth, okay, then ask Master Bai to come with me to meet his majesty. Bai Shan also simply went directly with him to ask to see the emperor. On the way, Zhang Hui couldn't help but ask him, how did Lord Bai persuade Prince Gao Wu? Knowing more, he can also persuade the other party. I seem to have heard someone say that Master Bai and Prince Gao Wu are old acquaintances, and they had a good relationship when they were in the capital. Bai Shan said, Master Zhang must have heard it wrong, the old acquaintance is true, I met him when the fifth prince of the high school was on his first mission to the capital in the early years, and it is not easy to talk about it. I have met him 4 or 5 times. I have only met 4 or 5 times in the capital, but there is no friendship. He and Bai Shan had seen more than so many meetings every day, and they still didn't have much friendship. Zhang Hui felt that the relationship between them needed to be repaired, so he smiled and said to Bai Shan, Master Bai, I'm about to go on an envoy. Before going out, I invite you and Master Zhou to have a meal. Master Zhang, don't be polite, Bai Shan said with a smile, my wife and I don't like drinking, so good things must be reserved for those who understand it, but Master Zhang can invite Zhao Qiuagong and the others. Forget it, he had already drank all his wine, and he couldn't invite them even if he hadn't drank it all. How many sips would the wine fall into his mouth? The emperor really doesn't care about Jiu very much now. It is not because he is valuable that he is still locked up now, but it is a bargaining chip in his hand. Although it is tasteless, it cannot be directly given to the other party, right? But if the courtier is useful, even if it is possible to send a son back to the other party for nothing, he agrees without hesitation. For Goguryeo, it is quite important that this is a prince, but for Dajin, this is just a prince of Goguryeo. He was of little use when the war was going well. The emperor agreed with a wave of his hand, but how to convince Gao Yu to use it for himself is up to Zhang Hui. Zhang Hui inquired a lot about Gao Yu from Bai Shan. Although he said that he did not have much friendship with Gao Yu, he must have a deep understanding of Gao Yu to be able to deceive such an important jade pendant from the other party. So he just stared at him. Bai Shan thought for a while and then said, Yu Gao is narrow-minded, short-sighted, good-natured, and hard to convince by coercion. It's good to lure him, but he shouldn't be too proud to avoid bad things. Zhang Hui, he doesn't have any advantages. Bai Shan thought about it seriously and asked, can you bend or stretch? That is the grass on the wall, which can be swayed by the wind. Such people are the most difficult to control, and the best to control. Whoever has the advantage will stand on which side? But he has a companion by his side. His knowledge is not bad, and he has some knowledge. If I were Master Zhang, I would not take him on this mission. Zhang Hui's eyes flashed and he understood, let him be isolated and helpless. Bai Shan smiled and nodded. Okay, Zhang Hui said after tidying up his official uniforms, and said to Bai Shan, then I'll go meet this high prince for a while now. Bai Shan saluted and retired and went back to the tent. Man Bao had already exchanged his clothes, and was about to find him, when he saw him coming back, he pulled someone in. She said, this is the dress, you can put it on now and wear it close to your body. Bai Shan touched it, but he couldn't figure out what kind of clothes it was made of, and the style was so strange that there was no placket or something. He lowered his voice and asked, this is the little father-in-law's own. Man Bao said, exchanged with someone else. Bai Shan nodded and said to Man Bao, you ask your little father-in-law to wait, and when Eng Shicheng is taken down, I will ask people to look around here to find out what is rare, the flowers, plants, trees and insects, fish and birds that we have never seen before. Beast, when the time comes, I will buy it and give it to him. Man Bao immediately nodded and said, okay, okay. Then he added, but don't spend too much money. Coco. Bai Shan got dressed, it was cold at this time, and it was not obvious to wear such an extra piece of clothing inside. Man Bao asked him, when did you go? The letter has been submitted, and there should be news before dark. If they agree, I will go directly to the second high school prince. If they don't agree, then I can only go to see some people quietly. Man Bao frowned, it's dangerous, isn't it? Bai Shan didn't care, the possibility of this is very small. If I were the second prince of high school, at this time, even if I would not surrender, I would meet the envoy. It can be delayed for a day, waiting for reinforcements. The Zhao Kingdom's guild is in a truce. Bai Shan thought for a while and then said, probably not, but after His Majesty's words, there won't be a large-scale attack. There's a buffer there. Sure enough, before dark, a letter came from there, agreeing to negotiate. Bai Shan made preparations, said goodbye to the emperor early the next morning, and led people to the opposite side. Yuan Yi brought troops and horses to pick up the envoy. Seeing that the person who came was a young man, he couldn't help frowning. So young, is he a crown? Bai Shan smiled and saluted Yuan Yi, and said, General Yuan, in the Xiaohong book, I will give up Bai Shan, and I also ask General Yuan to give more advice. Yuan Yi didn't dare to be rude when he heard about his official position. He dismounted and clenched his fists in return and said sideways, Master Bai, please. Bai Shan mounted his horse and took his team across the intermediate checkpoint into another city. He didn't look back, but he knew that Man Bao was watching him. Man Bao was standing on a building, watching him slowly disappear into the street on a horse. When Zhao Qiuagong saw that the envoy team had entered safely, he turned around and was about to go downstairs. For a moment. After thinking about it, he still comforted the other party, "Don't be sad, they are not brave, they should not dare to hurt our envoys, at most they will arrest Bai Shan and threaten us." See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2732. Man Bao was not comforted at all. She glanced at Zhao Qiuagong and asked, "Are you threatened?" Zhao Qiuagong shook his head. "No one can resist the progress of the army. If there is, that person must be the emperor." Man Bao took his eyes back and said to him, "General Manager, Bai Shan told me the day before yesterday that he refuted your face on the battlefield, and I want to apologize to you. I see that your face has not been very good recently. I'll have someone cook a bowl of tonic soup for you later." Zhao Qiuagong touched his face subconsciously and asked, "Is your face very bad?" Then he waved his hand indifferently and said, "It's not a big deal, but Master Zhou still has to advise Master Bai that you must do what you can to save people in the future, and on the battlefield, kindness is the most important thing." Man Bao said flatly, "He doesn't command soldiers." Zhao Qiuagong shook his head, "I'm the eldest son of Jin, who can't get off a horse to pick up a pen and mount a horse to kill the enemy. In the future, Bai Shan will always be a prefect, right? If his official luck is good, he might even be a Jadu envoy. Which one doesn't need to be in charge of soldiers?" Different from the literati of the northern and southern dynasties, the literati of the Jin dynasty had their own heroic spirit, and it was a basic requirement to mount a horse and be able to fight. Like Wei Ji, Lord Tang, and Feng Shangshu, who has never been on the battlefield and commanded soldiers and horses. Even Lu Shangshu, who used to follow the army to raise rations, was robbed from time to time by the enemy, or led people to rob the enemy. Man Bao was choked for a moment, and nodded after a while, "You're right, when he comes back, he will have to practice martial arts and horsemanship again." Zhao Qiuagong said, "These are all small ways, the most important thing is to be ruthless, and learn some military books along the way, but the things you learn from books may not be useful, just go to fight 2 more battles." When Zhao Qiuagong said this, his heart moved. Bai Shan was able to block his sword, which showed that he still had some skills, so he wanted to draw people into the ranks of military generals. If he entered the Ministry of War, the Ministry of War would ask the Ministry of Household for money later, and there would be people who would fight with each other. So he became enthusiastic, and said to Zhou Man, "Take good care of the wound on his hand, and I will take him to the battlefield after Eng Shicheng comes down." He said, "The Ministry of War is much better than the other 5. Man Bao. She had to change the soup for Zhao Qiuagong. Zhao Qiuagong received a bowl of bitter tonic soup, and the soldier who came with the soup said cautiously, "General Manager, Lord Zhou said, this medicine is very valuable. The army finally saved it. Drink it slowly." Zhao Qiuagong looked at the dark soup and frowned, "What are the pieces in this?" "Meat," the soldier said, "so this is a medicinal meal, it is not considered medicine, it is very expensive." Repeatedly being emphasized as precious, Zhao Qiuagong had a hard time not wanting to eat it. He swallowed and asked, "I don't know if there is any extra." I can see that His Majesty's face is very tired. The soldier said, "No, just a small jar, and Lord Zhou said that this medicinal meal is specially prepared for you, it is based on your physical condition, your Majesty may not be suitable." Zhao Qiuagong was even more suspicious. He suspected that Zhou Man was avenging private revenge. There were many reasons. It might be because his knife broke Bai Shan's mouth, or it might be because he said that he would not be threatened by Goguryeo because of Bai Shan. There are many reasons anyway. In terms of relationship, hey, they seem to have a good relationship. At least it's much better than Ashina and Chi Bai Heli, the people you see when you look up and don't look down are relatives. Thinking of this, Zhao Qiuagong reached out and took the bowl, took a sip, and almost vomited it. The soldier still looked at him with admiration. Zhao Qiuagong ate a bowl of medicinal food with difficulty, but it was not bitter, the taste could not be described in words, and the piece of meat was not delicious, the gravy tasted medicinal, and there was no pleasure in eating meat at all. Zhao Qiuagong put the bowl on the soldier, turned around and left. The soldier shouted from behind, "Master Chief, Lord Zhou asked you to drink more water." During the discussion, the emperor couldn't help but look at Zhao Qiuagong's face, and the others also quietly looked at it. Zhao Qiuagong raised his head to look at them, and he endured it, but he couldn't hold back. "Your Majesty, has the minister disobeyed?" The emperor withdrew his gaze and said solemnly, "No, it's just that you don't look very well, brother. Are you too tired recently, or slow down the attack? Bai Shan is just on the mission, and give him some time." "No," Zhao Qiuagong said immediately, "if the attack is stopped at this time, it will only harm him." General AncientChina also said, "It can be suspended, but it cannot be stopped." Zhao Qiuagong touched his face and asked darkly, "Is my face ugly?" The emperor didn't say a word, and General AncientChina said politely, "It's not ugly, but I heard that Lord Zhou specially made tonic soup for Zhao Qiuagong. That should be empty to a certain point before drinking tonic soup, right? It was him who fought for 2 days and 1 night in a row. After he came down, he was only stabbed with needles for 2 days, and he didn't need to drink medicine." Qi Baihe glanced at Zhao Qiuagong, glanced up and down at him obscurely, straightened his back proudly, and raised his chin by 2 points. Zhao Qiuagong, so angry, his reputation was killed, and I knew that I would not eat that bowl of tonic soup. He didn't want to face them here, so he raised his hand and clenched his fist and said, "Your Majesty, please go to battle and take down East 3rd Street." The emperor became more serious, and after pondering for a while, he asked, "Will the attack at this time be detrimental to Bai Shan?" Zhao Qiuagong said, "Bai Shan should be there at this time, but if the Goguryeo people want to shock him, they will definitely not see him right away. The minister can give him a greeting in this battle." After thinking about it, the emperor nodded and said, "Slow down and let them know our sincerity." Yes, Zhao Qiuagong took the order and left, and soon took people out of the camp to go to the city. When he left the camp, he happened to meet Zhou Man and a group of students who had just returned from the prison camp, so he stopped. Ma looked at Zhou Man and said, "Master Zhou, I remember your medicine." Man Bao said with a smile, "General Manager, when you return from the battle, you will know the magic of this medicine, and I will not harm you." Zhao Qiuagong snorted. Of course he knew that Zhou Man would not harm him, but it was true that he deliberately boiled the soup so badly, and made him tease. Zhao Qiuagong went into the city with his troops and horses. Watching the soldiers and horses passing by in front of him, Zhou Liru was a little worried. "Little aunt, uncle is at the enemy camp, will they be okay with sending troops at this time?" Man Bao quietly looked at the direction of the city and said, "It's fine to attack slowly. This is also Bai Shan's stepping stone, otherwise it's uncertain when he will be able to see people." At this moment, Bai Shan Zhen was standing in front of a yard, surrounded by people coming and going. Some people who came out of the house and passed by him would give him a glance, and some people who entered the house from the outside would also give him a glance. Bai Shan stood in the yard with a small smile, straightened his sleeves leisurely, and occasionally looked at the scenery of the yard, not in a hurry. It wasn't when the sun was at its highest in June and July, so he wasn't afraid to stand, and he could just grow taller in the sun. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2733. Seeing that the people inside had not seen them for a long time, Shuigui could not help frowning and looked up at Bai Shan, who was standing in front of him. Bai Shan was still standing tall and straight, and Deji, who was behind him, also stood silently, with no superfluous expression on his face. Shwegui lowered his eyes and said nothing, and continued to stand with them. Manbao returned to the medical account, and after assigning today's tasks, he personally took people to the front line to see if there were any new wounded soldiers. By the way, he handed in points to Keek to let him record the situation of Baishan. If there is any danger, drop by. She called the police. However, the alarm on her side has never been sounded, but there are soldiers from Goguryeo who quickly entered the council to warn. Prince, East 3rd Street was attacked by the Jin army, and it has already been occupied 10 feet. The second high school prince stood up from his seat and asked with a pale face, "Didn't Dajin send envoys here, why are they still sending troops?" The others were also surprised, and one said, "Prince, why don't you call your envoys to come in and ask? If they play tricks on us, we will kill their envoys directly. It's not right. If the two countries don't cut each other, isn't killing the envoy at this time a reason for them to continue to attack?" One person said, "Since the prince wants to make peace, it is not appropriate to be too tough on the envoy at this time. Yes, the one who can come here at this time must be the official who is in charge of the great Jin dynasty. The prince might as well fight for one or two. Even Nisa thinks so." The second high school prince thought about it, then sat back and said with a sullen face, "Let the envoy come in." Someone went down and asked Baishan and his party. The second prince of high school said to Ling Bing, "Send 3,000 people to support, and be sure to defend East 3rd Street." The city of Ungshi was so big, and losing a street would have a great impact on them, and their territory could no longer be shrunk. Baishan brushed past Ling Bing who went out. He glanced at the bloody aura on the other party's body, raised his mouth slightly, and brought Shuigui, Deji, and others in together. Standing in the hall, Baishan first glanced at the person in the seat. There were two people sitting on it. The young man in the middle looked a bit like the fifth prince of the high school. At this time, there was no expression on his face. He should be the second prince of the high school. Half a step down, there was a chair on which sat a middle-aged man, wearing armor, but the expression on his face seemed to be very kind. It should be Ungshi Chen Nisa. The Nisa of Goguryeo is equivalent to the governor of the Jin dynasty, who holds the military and political power in one place. The Forbidden Army went all the way to the east, but it was stuck on the city of Ungshi. Naturally, there was a reason why Goguryeo did not dare to lose the city again and sent heavy troops to support it, but it was also due to this Nisa, right? Therefore, Baishan didn't dare to underestimate him. He lowered his eyes, bowed his hands and bowed with a smile on his face. "Jin Chen Baishan has seen the second prince." Shuigui and the others just clasped their fists. Seeing them being so negligent, Goguryeu's officers and ministers couldn't help but get angry, but Baishan was not rude as the main envoy, and they were in a weak position at this time, so they could only stare at Shuigui and others behind Baishan in dissatisfaction. The second high prince clenched his fists and saw Baishan raised his head and looked at him with a smile, while Nisa, who was beside him, had already got up and went down the steps, greeted him with the courtesy of the vassal state, and said with a smile, "Suli, the lower official, I have seen the envoy of the upper country. This one is the second prince of our kingdom." The second prince of high school pulled out a smile and got up, and went down the steps to return the salute. "Gao Ji has seen the envoy of the Shangguo, please come to the seat." The next person stepped forward, removed the two chairs above, and placed them facing each other. Baishan was the guest, one step behind the second-year high school prince, took a seat on the right and looked at the Goguryeo officers and ministers who were seated in order below, stretched out his hand to take the national letter from Shuigui who was standing behind him, and handed it to Gao Ji who was on the opposite side. "Second prince, this is the national document of our country." The second high school prince took it, opened it, and couldn't help but feel up and down, and almost spit out anger from his nose. When Dajin was the upper country and was crusade against Goguryeo, of course, the letter of credentials would not be written very friendly. It directly listed the evil deeds of Goguryeo, indicating the reason for their conquest of Goguryeo. This letter of credentials is to make them surrender. The second prince of the high school slammed the letter of his credentials and said with a sullen face, "So the envoy is not here to seek peace." Bai Shan said, "The situation is very good for Dajin now. We have already occupied half of the country in Goguryeo. As long as we capture the city of Ungshi, we can drive down. With such a good situation, why does Dajin need to negotiate and use a single word?" The second prince of the high school shook his face and said, "Then the envoy, please come back. There is no need to say more about the surrender. I, the Goguryeo royal family, would rather die than surrender." Bai Shan persuaded, "Why should the second prince be stubborn? Continuing to resist is just hurting others, not to mention the people of Ungshi city. The prince should not think about himself, but also the people of the whole city." Gao Ji sneered, "It's just for the sake of the people that you can't surrender. Do you want you to move the people of Ungshi city inward, and let them endure the pain of their hearts and leave their homes?" Bai Shan smiled slightly and said, "The second prince has been thinking too much. If the second prince is willing to surrender, I can guarantee that the people of Ungshi will not be relocated to the mainland. I just received the news that the Jin army is attacking the East 3rd Street, and I don't believe the envoy's promise." The second high school prince sneered, "You Jin state sent envoys to us, but at the same time attacked my territory. How can I trust the promise you made at this time? If you don't attack, I can't see you now." Bai Shan doesn't have so much time to spend with him, but his face is full of surprise, then suddenly realized, and finally sighed, "The second high prince may not know, a few days ago, when the west gate of Ungshi city was captured, Prince Goguryeo surrendered on behalf of Goguryeo and His Majesty." Everyone's eyes widened, including the second high school prince sitting opposite. Bai Shan took out a jade pendant from his sleeve and handed it to the second prince of the high school opposite. The fifth prince of the high school believes that once the city of Ungshi is destroyed, Goguryeo is not far from destroying the country, so he is willing to surrender on behalf of the royal court of Goguryeo and His Majesty. You may not know that the group of envoys to persuade surrender headed by the fifth prince had already left for the inner city a few days ago. Zhang Hui, who had just persuaded the fifth prince and planned to leave tomorrow, sneezed loudly and frowned slightly. Could it be that his wife and son miss him? Bai Shan pinched his fingers and said, "It's already the 4th day, so hurry up. With their pace, they should reach the domestic city soon." The second high school prince's face was instantly pale, and even the generals below were hit hard and panicked for a while. At this time, it is too late to send troops to intercept. Yes, if people are not approaching the inner city, how could he tell them this important news? The second high school prince's eyes were about to bleed. He stared at the jade pendant in Bai Shan's hand. He didn't pick it up, but there was a jade pendant of the same standard, but a slightly different color, with their respective names engraved on it. So he can recognize at a glance that this is the fifth jade pendant. That stupid and cowardly bitch of the fifth, how dare he? See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2734. Seeing that he didn't answer, Bai Shan got up and put the jade pendant on his palm, and smiled softly. "The reason why the fifth prince of Gao gave me this token is that he wants me to pass it on to the second prince, our minister of Dajin. There are quite a few, among them there are many who were princes. Not to mention, General Ashina, General Kibiheli, these people were all famous people, and they are still famous after they came down to the Jin dynasty. The achievements are greater than before, the fame, power, and wealth are only greater and more. Why should the second prince stick to a false name?" Bai Shan put his fingers together and held the jade pendant, and said meaningfully, "The fifth prince has a longer view than the second prince in this regard. If he can persuade the king of Goguryeo, then his contribution will be enough. Isn't it more honorable to be a prince than to be a prince of Goguryeo? The second high school prince clenched the jade pendant in his hand, wishing he could smash it on the ground in front of Bai Shan, but instead of smashing it, he twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "No matter how round the moon in another country is, it will not be as beautiful as the moon in his own country." Bai Shan said, "There is no country in the world, but someone will come to the enclosure to divide it, and then there will be a tribe and a kingdom." The Liaodong area was originally integrated with the Central Plains, but it was because of the war in the Central Plains that the Gao clan revolted during the chaos. The court should have taken back this land in the previous dynasty. Gao Ji said sharply, "So the previous dynasty perished. But this dynasty will not be destroyed." Bai Shan replied indifferently without counseling him, "Your Majesty is kind and generous, and I didn't want to cause more trouble. After your Majesty's enthronement, Goguryeo also declared himself a minister, but you counted carefully. In the past 20 years, how many times have you committed crimes? Obstructing other countries from paying tribute, killing people for crimes, being inhumane in government, oppressing the people, any court can crusade against you, etc. Until now, it's only your Majesty's kindness and kindness. You only have one chance. And now, I stand here to persuade you to surrender, which is also an opportunity for you to give to the royal court of Goguryeo." Bai Shan looked at him and said sharply, "East 3rd Street was attacked, it was Zhao Qiagong who was attacking, the big one. Jin, not everyone can bear this sigh. The soldiers in the army need to accumulate military merit, they need to be named marquis, and they need military merit. It's only half of the people," Bai Shan said. "If you are stubborn, there are many people who want to use you to make military achievements." Gao Ji grinned, staring at Bai Shandao with rage in his eyes. "Come on then, what am I afraid of?" He said word by word, "I will be the same as you." Bai Shan got up and sneered, "Then it only counts when the second prince can go to the battlefield. Zhao Qiagong is on Dongsan Street right now. Will the prince want to meet him for a while?" The second high school prince got up and shouted loudly, "Come here, please let the envoy go to rest." Then he walked down the steps quickly, took his sword from the guard and walked out. Seeing this, the others panicked immediately and hurried out to chase. Nisa didn't leave, but called for humanity, "Send the envoy back to the guest house and treat him well, don't neglect the envoy." "Yes." The little official who took the order glanced at Bai Shan who was standing on the steps, lowered his head timidly, bowed and said, "Envoy please." Bai Shan smiled and bowed to Nisa, then turned around and the official who entertained him left. Nisa waited for them to leave, and then hurriedly chased them out. The second-year high school prince didn't really impulsively go to East 3rd Street to find Zhao Qiagong desperately. He wasn't that stupid. Horses are just commanding soldiers and horses, and he does not feel that he is better than Zhao Qiagong who has experienced many battles in leading troops. So he came out aggressively and entered the side hall. Nisa came over quickly, and there were only 3 confidants left at the moment, and the other high school princes found reasons to dismiss them. When Nisa came over, he was playing with the jade pendant in his hand. When Nisa came in, he held the jade pendant in his hand and slammed it on the ground. The jade pendant shattered, and the fragments splashed all over the room, which startled everyone in the room. Nisa also took a step, and then stepped forward and saluted, "Prince, the envoy has already arranged to go to the guest house." Gao Ji snorted coldly and asked, "Do you think that Gao Yu really surrendered to Dajin?" The others looked at each other in dismay, bowed their heads and said nothing. Nuasa said, "We initially guessed that the 5th prince had already encountered an accident, but the current situation is actually better than previously predicted." Gao Ji sneered, "What's the good? It's better to die." They speculated at first that Gao Yu was either arrested or imprisoned or committed suicide. After all, he is an envoy, Dajin should not kill him, but he can be imprisoned and humiliated, but he did not expect that they would bring people to Goguryeo, follow the army all the way, and even turn them back, even in turn made an envoy to Dejin to persuade them to surrender. So angry that Gao Ji is about to lose his mind. Nisa asked, "Prince, what should we do about this? Everyone is almost in the inner city, what else can we do?" He said, "The most urgent task is to defend the city of Ungshi. The fifth child is wasting his time, and the father and king will not surrender." He sneered and said, "I thought it would be good to be an envoy of the Jin state? The Jin won't kill him, but his father will kill him. Regardless of what envoys are not envoys, Jiu is still the prince of Goguryeo, the son of the great king." Nisa pondered, the words were said by the envoys of Jin, and it may not be true. The prince might as well send someone back to the inner city to ask questions, so as to know the king's plan. Gao Ji groaned. Yuan Yi said, "Send someone back, what if the king asks about the war in Ungshi Cheng?" Gao Ji lowered his eyes. Yuan Yi caught a glimpse of Gao Ji's expression, and said in a low voice, "And the fifth prince has already walked in front of the surrender. If it's true, he's a prince and an official." Nisa looked at Yuan Yi sternly for the first time. The stern look in his eyes made Yuan Yi lower his head in fright, and subconsciously avoided his gaze. The second high school prince was silent. Obviously, he was not as strong in his heart as he showed in front of Bai Shan, and would really rather be broken than broken. Nisa's face twitched, she was speechless for a while, and the room fell silent for a while. After a long time, the second high school prince said, "My father is not in good health, so let's put this matter down first. I have an army of 300,000 people in Goguryeo, and my father will not surrender to Gao Yu's slanderous words. Our top priority is to defend it. Ungshi City." When Nisa heard the words, he hesitated, but after a long while, he still didn't say anything. "Where does Goguryeo still have 300,000 troops? Not to mention that there is still a Jin army roaming and raging in the hinterland, that is, how many people have been shot down by this army in Liaodong, where are their 300,000 troops? Didn't the second prince know about this situation? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2735. He naturally knew that in order to save Ungshi Cheng, Wang Ting had more than 200,000 troops here, accounting for one-third of the country's troops, plus the troops lost in Liaodong City, Bian City, and other places, and for the sake of the soldiers stationed in the hinterlands such as Baisha City, and now the remaining troops in the country are probably less than 200,000. Gao Ji didn't dare to report the situation here to Wang Ting because he knew this. Once Wang Ting knew that Anshishan had lost so far, it would be fine if he couldn't send reinforcements, and he would be sent back to inquire. Gao Ji felt that none of his brothers could replace him. If he couldn't keep Ungshi Cheng, then others would not be able to, so he would rather go all the way to the dark. As one of the leaders, Nisa naturally knew that among the princes, the second prince was the only one who could be of great use. If other princes came, the situation in Ungshi Cheng would probably be even worse. And it's a big no-no for changing players before the battle. Nisa rubbed her forehead with a headache, her back arched when she left the room, as if she was 10 years older. Bai Shan and the others were arranged in a small house, the yard was a little low, and the situation in the yard could be seen from outside. However, the walls of the houses in this area are not very high. Bai Shan took a look and went in. The guards pulled the carriage and horses in. They didn't have the chance to send out some of the gold and silver jewelry they wanted to give to Gao Ji. At this point, the box was unloaded from the car and moved into the house. Bai Shan stood in the yard and looked at it, smiled, turned around and said to the official who entertained him, "I wonder if there is a kitchen here." Yes, the official was not sure about the second prince's attitude towards them for a while, so although his face was expressionless, he did not dare to offend him, and said, "In the back, do the envoys want to see it?" Bai Shan smiled and nodded, went to the kitchen to look around, and said, I come from Shu, and I have no other hobby in my life, just love to eat. I heard that the small white cakes in AncientChina are very delicious, but unfortunately I haven't been here for many days. I have used it, I wonder if the adults may find a cook for me who is good at this method. The official frowned slightly. Bai Shan took out a purse and stuffed it to him, smiled and said, I wish in my life, I don't know if I will be able to go back on this mission, and a happy day is a day, please let the adults be more accommodating. The official touched the round ones. Although he hadn't opened them, he also guessed that there were pearls inside, so he hesitated and nodded, yes, but I only invite people, but buy some kind of. I can still afford this amount of money, Bai Shan said with a smile and salute. So Xiaoguan left and took people straight to the chef's house in a restaurant, and he was brought to him in a short time. The chef knelt down in front of Bai Shan tremblingly. In front of the official, Bai Shan didn't show much expression, just said to the chef, I'm a little hungry. Since I'm here, let's make lunch first. He tilted his head and thought for a moment, it's too late now, you can just make something, I want to eat xiaobapasu at night. The head chef shivered and said, Gui, noble, there's no food right now. The whole city was fighting, and everyone didn't go out. They basically ate white porridge, and they hadn't eaten for many days. Bai Shan frowned in distress, how can this be, I just love this one. Xiaoguan frowned, kicked the chef and asked, can't you buy it? Then where do the meals we eat every day in the council house come from? The head chef immediately said, some people have planted some things in the city, and they have also raised some things, but now I'm going out. The little official said nothing. Bai Shan looked at Daji. Daji took out an ingot of gold and stuffed it to the little official. The little official just glanced at it, then quietly put it into his hand, lowered his eyes and said, Envoy, don't worry, I will arrange it, and then give him a sign, and he will be able to walk in the city. Only then did Bai Shan nodded with satisfaction, and then said to the chef, who else is there in your family? Do you know how to cook? Or if you know a good cook, find a few more people in my yard. Little, you have to buy vegetables and cook, I'm afraid you won't be able to spare time. He turned to look at Daji. Daji. Daji said with a blank face, our young master has lunch one day, Mao is eating breakfast, and breakfast must include pasta, preferably a bowl of millet porridge, which nourishes the stomach, in addition to a bowl of goat milk. The milk must be boiled with tea leaves to get rid of the fishy smell, add a little sugar to brew it. When it is time to use tea, we brought the tea ourselves, there are 5 kinds in total, generally our young master uses Mengding Shiwa for tea in the morning. This tea is small, only for personal use, don't use it wrong. As for dim sum, you can make your own. It's best to have dim sum from your local Ungshi city. Just tell us what you need, and we'll pay for it. Daji's face was almost engraved with the words we are not short of money. After talking about the morning tea, Daji continued, lunch will be served at noon, so you have to prepare it in advance. 1 cold, 1 soup and 3 dishes are the most basic, so that's what you are good at, it's best if our young master doesn't eat it. Yes, but there must be soup, as fine as possible. Shen Shi, our young master will use afternoon tea. For the tea, we will use the purple bamboo shoots tea and Yangxian tea that we brought. For dessert, we will order xiaobapasu first this afternoon, and the rest will be ordered later. If there are guests coming, then I'm going to soak in the white dew of the western mountain and the stone flowers of the fairy cliff. The evening meal is used during the unitary season. It is the same standard as the lunch meal. The kitchen needs to be on fire from time to time. Although it is not suitable to eat at night, our young master is still young and growing up. Maybe he will be hungry at any time. He called, that's when the kitchen won't be out of food. Daji looked down at the chef, remember. The head chef nodded blankly, sighing in his heart, who is this, so much attention, more attention than the Nasa he has ever seen. Not to mention the petty officials on the side, even Shuigui was stunned and could not help but go to Baishan. Daji didn't just talk, he immediately led the chef out, opened a box, took out 5 boxes of tea leaves, taught him to recognize tea leaves, and even gave him a packet of fine salt. Your young master salt may I'm not used to it, use this to cook. The chef opened it and glanced at it. What he saw was white and fine salt. He twisted it up and tasted a few. The entrance was salty, and there was almost no bitterness. Chef. The Xiaoguan watched the whole process, and now it was confirmed that this envoy was born rich, and was not an aggrieved master. So he lowered his eyes to cover his expression. The chef's heart turned sharply, and he smiled at Daji. Sir, my mother-in-law and son can cook, and they can also help the little one. Look, can I call them to help? Daji nodded expressionlessly, yes, but keep your hands and feet clean. Our young master likes cleanness, but he doesn't like unclean people. Don't worry, they all love cleanliness. Xiaoguan, what do you need to pay attention to when you go to the battlefield? However, this envoy was white and clean, with a face as white as a powder ball, but he had an awe-inspiring temperament, which made no one dare to offend. See you tomorrow.